Seconds for Sarah. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the February 8th business meeting. And can we start with roll call, please, Janet?
Charles Black-Lance.
Here.
Kevin Boyles.
Here.
Tom Hageland.
Here.
Ruth Nelson.
Here.
Bob Nystrom.
Here.
Jana Shogren.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I just have to make a COVID announcement. Due to the current federal and state emergency, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay at home and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting of the Brainerd School Board is being conducted in accordance with the Minnesota statutes 13D.021. Meetings by telephone or other electronic means, persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by watching on YouTube Live. This meeting is being recorded. Access to the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as is reasonably possible. Also, we are going to announce tonight that the deadline to submit a name for the new Performing Arts Center is Monday, February 15th, and you can submit your idea at blueprint181.org. We have one amendment to the agenda tonight. It was just as you can see, there was a error with the date in B. So that is the amendment, and if someone would make a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Nelson, second from Director Black-Lance to approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion passes. Next, we'll have district recognitions. Superintendent Larson.
All right. Congratulations to seniors Gabe Maurer and Rachel Trusty for being named Brainerd High School's Minnesota State High School League AAA award winners for Brainerd Public Schools. So congratulations to them. Congratulations also to the BHS Knowledge Bowl teams who took first, second, and third place at the virtual meet, which was held last Wednesday. With team scores of 56.5, 48.5, and 47.5, they outscored all of the other teams to earn top honors in the first competition of the season. So congratulations to our kids. It's really exciting to have them competing. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
We should have an exhibition of the top knowledgeable team in Brainerd take on the school board for fun for the scholarships. It'd be fun.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
You're 100% sure you want to do that, Charles?
Next on our agenda is the public input. Due to the health pandemic and social distancing guidelines from public health officials, the school board has determined that it is not feasible for the general public to physically attend this meeting in the board's meeting room. For any comments, please send to communications@isd181.org and they will be read aloud to the Board of Education. And I would like to tell the public that we've received a lot of input on this. There are people that would like to address the board. So at our February 22nd meeting, we will allow people to come in. They will be in the hallway and then they'll be called in one at a time to give their public input. So we did hear the voice of the public, and there are people that want to be in person. So we'll honor that. Okay, next we have approval of minutes for the regular board meeting, January 25th.
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes from 25th of January.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Director Boyle, second by Director Sjogren, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 25th. Is there any discussion?
I just have one thing, and this is on the thing before. You didn't ask if there was any public input. We should make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And we can come back to that after we approve this
Okay.
minutes, but, right?
thank you for catching that. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign, motion passes. So we'll go back, I apologize, on the public input. Is Corey available?
Yeah.
I'm here and there's no emails at this point.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Okay. Next, we'll look at approving the consent calendar and presentation of additional bills for payment. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review that. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar and presentation of additional bills for payment.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Blackland, second by Director Nelson to approve the consent calendar and presentation of additional bills for payment. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion passes unanimously. Next, we'll have presentations. We're going to start out with the COVID-19 update.
Good evening. So we're just going to give a quick update here. As Lane Superintendent Larson on last Thursday called it, it's a fabulous February. On the first, our 3rd through 4th grade returned to in-person learning. Our 5th grade returned to a hybrid learning model, as well as our LEC transition programs and Brainerd Learning Center returned to an in-person learning. And then next week on the 16th, our 5th through 12th grade will be returning to a modified in-person learning model. So I know this is something that people have been waiting for, so we will be able to do that next week. Some data points that we're still currently reviewing is, as always, as our case count. On the 4th, it was at 28.03, and they are projecting it to be below 20 on this week, which is great news. It's still showing that we are going down. Currently, as of today, we have 5 staff in quarantine and 11 positive staff, 37 students and 16 positive students. And with the positives, that does seem like a lot, but we have to look at, a lot of them are families too, so that kind of puts that number a little bit higher. The Safe Learning Plan update, we've done 2 rounds of testing on site, which has been very good. And then we also continue to vaccinate staff. We're working with Essentia, Guy Point Pharmacy, Crow Wing Public Health, and MDE with that. So anytime we get information, we forward that to our staff. Here's the graph that we continue to show, and we can still continue to see the decline.
These are the details regarding the learning model. We do have some learning transition days. Reason these days are needed again is if you look at, especially in 5th grade, so this will be the 5th model that our 5th grade staff have implemented since last March. I got to visit with 5th grade staff today and they're in good spirits. They've appreciated the time. Kids seem pretty excited. They've never really met the other half of their classmates. So these last few weeks, they've been able to see each other in the hallways. They've been able to gather in gym classes, and now they're going to be in the classrooms. So a little bit of angst, but overall, I think staff are feeling very fortunate to be having the option to be vaccinated. For those that are choosing, that's actually been a huge relief. So a huge thank you to Crow Wing County Public Health, who prioritized educational staff. It seems to be going well. Our lists that we've sent, we haven't had any more staff calling in, so we feel they're getting access to do that. But those model shifts, it's really going to be a lot of hauling of different materials back in the classrooms and then switching. They created awesome learning cohorts by subject area this time. And kids really like that and staff are really liking that. But now we're gonna blow it all back up, which is a good thing because they're all gonna be back in classrooms. So, but lots of ranging happening there for 5th grade. 6th through 8th grade, same thing. There's some angst about just having everybody back together. For 6th through 8th graders, haven't had the chance to meet their colleagues and their peers, except maybe virtually sometimes when the teachers have been doing the dual screen. But they're getting very excited to be back. And then our 9th through 12th is gonna be a little bit different. The reason we decided to do it differently there, as Ms. Russ will probably point out, the high school looks different from when our kids went out before Thanksgiving. There's actually different hallway paths and traffic patterns that they have to be able to follow. On top of that, they all have new schedules. 2nd semester started, so some of those students don't even know how to get to the right class. So that's why we're gonna bring in the A group those first 2 days, the B group the second 2 days, and then on the 22nd, they'll be back in their full learning models. So lots of things to do there.
So as this all comes, exciting time, we still, want to be able to keep our kids in school and keep everything going. So what MDE and local public health has really stressed to us is what happens outside of school will have an impact on whether or not we can keep our kids in school for the rest of the year. So they're asking that the public continue to wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands frequently and often, avoid large gatherings such as birthday parties, stay home if you're sick, get tested if you need to. And then from this point on, Superintendent Larson will do any COVID-19 related communications on an as-needed basis. That's good if anybody has any questions.
Our goal is to be in and stay in.
I did have one question that, thanks for all the work and thanks to all of our staff for where we are. From the report that you put out, Lane, is it our intent, if possible, if things continue on a positive note, that before the end of the school year, that kids will be back every day, all day? Is that potentially another move?
Doubt it, and the reason I say that is because because of the amount of staff that we have, our 6th through 12th grade staff are also doing the distance cohorts. And the voluntary distance cohorts have to stay. And so during the afternoon and then on Wednesdays is when they address those students through the cohorts. But it's the same teachers that are teaching in person and the distance cohorts of our kids, so.
Okay. And I kind of suspected that, so a follow-up question, is that a state governor mandate as well, then, that you have to offer the distance?
Yes, that is a mandate that we have to have it, so.
And we don't have any insights to that other than the monthly reoccurrence executive orders?
Great.
Correct. The good news is we have many families starting to bring students back in. So our elementary cohorts have started to shrink down in size, which has allowed us to bring some of that elementary staff back in to support the needs directly in buildings. The secondary numbers are typically staying fairly stable. Starting to see more middle schoolers.
I'll share data.
Come back in so they can probably answer more specifics, different than what's being seen at the high school. And I think that just shows the developmental level of our kids and kind of the unique needs of learners. But until that goes away,
Yep.
we really can't double up our staffing. So we'd like to, but
Yeah, we had a nice number, once the letter went out on Thursday, I want to say that it was about 100 kids that made a transition, and 75 of them were bringing them from distance to in-person, and 25 that went from in-person, or what we're in right now, and stayed in distance. But I think there's some reasons for that, that are kind of out of our control, mostly with athletics and activities, trying to not spread at all and be able to continue to compete in sports and such. But they're still our kids, and we're still giving great education to our kids, even through the distance learning model. And so we're going to continue to do, and if things change, we will keep you informed on that too, and we'll change as well. But there's a lot of excitement in the air right now with bringing our kids back on site, so.
And what about transportation? Is that still 50% in the buses?
no. So that's also we've been able to ease up on that a bit. There's more strict guidance between the distance between the driver and the students. And then there's also specific seating. They want students in assigned seats. So when we go to quarantine if needed, then we can look at who is in front, who is behind. And then it's also still about the duration of ride, because they are in an enclosed setting, depending on the length of the time as they're riding on that bus. And right now too, we're only down, I believe, 2 routes. So we've been able to maintain, Rikers has been able to maintain some driving. We've had to combine a couple of routes because of issues there, but so far, as much as we've opened up, we've been able to go, so that's good. And having buses for activities, as those have all started to ramp up, so. But like transportation will say, they felt like they've opened up school 5 times this year too, as we change the things. But right now, things are looking good. Staff are staying healthy.
And the same, what you were just talking about with the 3 feet when feasible for students and 6 feet between the bus driver and the kids, same thing goes in the classroom. That 3 feet, kids to be separate when feasible, but they want more space between the teacher and the students, so that's where the 6 feet comes, so. Yep.
Tell us what you're hearing from the parents of the students. Are they as happy as the students are that the kids are back?
As a parent, yes.
There's one very,
Okay.
I would say they're echoing a lot of
Yeah.
the teachers too. They're anxious. Elementary, not so much. People have felt very comfortable in our little world. As they start to go to secondary, I mean, there's just that anxiety as the older kids get together and, but I think socially, emotionally, mental health wise, definitely excited. And just to be able to have that connection time back together. But the angst, I mean, right now, and the one thing I heard echoed by staff today is they are so ready to do this. They just don't want the rug ripped out again. They want to be able to get in and stay in, and that's where it's going to take all of us. But they are ready.
And that's a good point, because when they gave us permission that we could bring our kids back in this modified in-person, they said, we're gonna give you permission to do it because your numbers are going down and you're following the protocol so nicely and everything. But they said, again, please stress the importance of wearing your mask, staying out of large gatherings as much as you can, like we had on the last screen. And so that's why it was in the letter. We're talking about it again tonight because that's how we're gonna be able to keep our kids in school this year. And we've got 3 more months yet, and we've got some really strong education that we're gonna provide during that time.
The nice thing, this fades away emergency care. We've been providing emergency care kindergarten through 8th grade. So as the students coming in, that subsides that. We've been doing meal delivery. So when you looked at 22,000 meals a week, having kids back in, we're being able to give some of those direct meals. So our meal deliveries are starting to become smaller and smaller. We've moved to meal pickup, starting this Wednesday and next. So feels good. We just want to stay here.
Yep.
Really, really, really bad. I think
Yep.
that's for all staff.
And I just, my 8th grader says she's excited because when you're on Zoom, no, a lot of kids don't have their cameras on, so she's excited to actually be with the teacher. She said she wants that connection again, so they're excited.
Well, I think I echo the board when I say thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you to the teachers, thank you to the principals for their hard work, and thank you to the parents and the families that have worked so hard to make this work with their kids. I know it's been stressful at home, and we're all thinking of you.
And extra kudos to that 5th grade team too.
Yeah,
Because they have had more model changes. This last one, they were in it for 2 weeks, and now it's getting changed on them again, but just some
Yeah,
extra
it's been
kudos to
amazing.
them, because this hasn't been easy for anybody, so, yeah.
And the paras too.
Parents have been.
Yeah.
If you have to pick a
Crux.
frontline worker it's been our paraprofessionals, because they actually have been with kids
Yep.
the entire time. That emergency care has been demanding we've had over 500 students a day, and you just think of the unique needs that are coming with that, so they've been awesome.
The 5th grade teachers seem to be doing a wonderful job of explaining this to the children as well. My 5th grader was definitely briefing me on what's up, and that was good. I felt pressure to
To understand,
know, so.
Yeah, they're tired. It's hard to be this tired, but the excitement's starting to overtake some of that fatigue, which is fun.
Are volunteers still allowed in the buildings?
We haven't had volunteers in the building, and as a matter of fact, we're gonna continue to limit that. We've been very creative with what volunteers can do virtually, so like our foster grandparents, Corey can speak to that, of getting some of those connections. As things start to open up, there's been some limited, but at this point, unfortunately, all the great volunteers we have, we're trying to find other ways to get them involved for now. So right now, we'll keep students and staff and make them our priority.
And I think too, just thanking once again Essentia Health, Guide Point, Crow Wing County Public Health, MDH, MDE. Our county has been fabulous at putting the needs of our education system at the forefront and making sure that our staff can be vaccinated. And so kudos to them as well, because a lot of this is happening faster here than it is other places, because our county put education at the forefront of their guidance. So
Yeah, that's been a gift for sure.
it has, yep. So let's hear from the principals. Thank you.
Are we gonna do one at a time, or will they all be here? What is the plan, Lane?
Still oldest.
No, grade levels going on.
Can we have the wisest first, please?
Grade level.
Oh,
Oh, grade level.
okay. Well,
I'm not the youngest age-wise, that much I know.
Good evening.
All right. Well, thanks for having us here tonight to give a little bit of an update coming at you from the schools. And I took a few notes because I, of course, am representing all 6 of the elementary schools and had an opportunity to talk to my elementary administrative colleagues last week and a little bit today through some email. And then, of course, the staff at Baxter Elementary School, because that's where I'm principal at. And I'd like to start with just saying we opened this year, you know, where has this year gone and what has this year been like in 3 to 5 minutes, I think is what my task is. We started in the hybrid learning model, and we had to make many changes at all of our buildings to be able to open in that method. And that meant having people take a look at thinking outside of the box and looking at putting people in different roles and having classrooms be in different roles. So not any one of our elementary schools had exactly the same model based on our staffing needs, but all of us had to ask a lot of many people. So in order to make those class sizes smaller, we had to look at all of our staff and then pull some of those people out of their normal roles, such as the title and the interventionist roles, the phy-ed and the music roles, and then put those people in to help the core classroom cohorts at each grade level in order to have enough sections. And then there was a lot of planning, and there still is absolutely ongoing planning at a daily level in some of the cohorts in order to help ensure that all students are getting that high quality, well-prepared education with all of the players at the table, some of whom haven't been a 4th grade teacher in their past. They might have been an interventionist. They're certainly qualified to be an educator, but that wasn't what they were doing last year. So then their colleagues are helping them to plan and prepare and to be ready for what's coming the next day so that we're basically all on the same page and delivering that same curriculum. I think this year more than ever, all of the elementary schools have worked very hard on the pacing guide to be as close as possible, because we do have students transitioning back and forth between the distance learning model and then in person. And we've had that from the beginning for a variety of needs and reasons. And so you want those learners as close in curriculum as possible so that that transition is easy for them. 2 questions that I thought of is how is this year going from the staff perspective and how is it going from the student perspective? And I was able to talk to a few students and ask them what they think of this school year. And I would summarize the feelings of students of saying, our students are so positive, they are so resilient, and they're so flexible. They are happy to be learning. They are thrilled to be back in school in the elementaries. But I tell you what, they were hardworking troopers when we were forced to go from the in-person to the distance learning model, and they have been doing a phenomenal job. I think many adults at the beginning of the year thought that masks and shields may be an issue, especially with our littles. It has just been a non-issue from the beginning. They wear their mask, they wear their shield. It has not been an issue. How has this year been going from the staff perspective? I mean, that answer could be long, 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 but what I would tell you this, it's been tough. I don't think you'd find too many staff at any level that would tell you it has not been a hard year, and a hard year starting from March 13th when we had to transition into what's going on with the pandemic. There are holes and gaps in the learning of our students from when we pushed to distance learning last spring, and the gaps were wider than we have seen sometimes. Our teachers are working harder in many respects than they've had to work before. Having said that, the smaller class sizes that this hybrid learning model has forced us into for our safety has certainly helped us as we look at that gap closure and trying to give individual teacher attention to more and more students, as that one teacher is in the classroom for the most parts. I would say that the challenges and changes that we have had with the buildings and with the moving and the packing, and all of our buildings have had a bit of that, have just been added along with the COVID piece and the pandemic issues that we've got going on, and I could not be more proud of our elementary staff. They too have been resilient, they have been flexible, they have come to the table with smiles on their face and a can-do attitude, and what do you need from me today? What does it need to look like next week? If I need to have it look different, I will do something different. Tell me what we need for what's best for our students, and I will do it. And we are just very proud of the staff at all 6 of our elementary schools. Attendance has been more of a struggle in our distance learning. So both for those students that families have chosen distance learning all year long, as well as all 6 of our schools, when we pushed out to distance learning, we noticed more struggles with attendance. So that's where we're seeing attendance. It's different for our littles than being right there in person. Sometimes it is harder for them to get on that device on their own or follow through a lesson on their own. And if adult is not able to be there with them, I think that's where we're seeing some of them not attending as well. So we know that that's something that we need to address, and we've all been working on that collectively in our elementary schools, talking through attendance and what things that we can do to help our families that are in distance learning and help our staff too, that are wanting to connect with those kids and missing those kids at their live meets. The classroom and building space was another topic that I had. How are we making this work? We're using absolutely every space possible in all of our buildings, from turning music rooms into classrooms, using gymnasiums for space since we don't have music in gym, all of those things, using stage, using cafeteria spaces in different ways. But we certainly started out at the beginning saying we can and will make it work, because we want the opportunity to have these kids in front of us in the buildings when possible. So all of our buildings have looked at spaces and how we can make that work. Speaking strictly from Baxter, because that's where I'm at, I can say I cannot tell the community how grateful and thankful I am that we got through our building project and we actually have the space to make it work. I've had to use my music room for early childhood, a flex classroom, for space, and absolutely every extra classroom that we had, looking at having some room for overflow when Baxter grows. That right now, all of those spaces are classrooms this year, but we're grateful and thankful for these building projects because it has afforded us the space that we need to make things work this school year. Would end on saying, because my time is probably up, overall, all things considered, we're having the best year possible given the circumstances. And we couldn't do it without the hard work of our teachers. We couldn't do it without students being positive, resilient, and responsible with their work. And we could not do it without the partnership of our families. So we are thankful for our families stepping up and helping out whenever possible, because they too have had many transitions to go through. So I think that summarizes where, I was just going to give a few numbers as we talked about distance learning. I can speak to what Heidi said before, that that gap is closing. I think of how many students are out there still choosing distance learning. But at Baxter, overall, my enrollment is at about 505 right now total. And out of that, I've got 47 out in distance learning.
What was the highest it was at?
62.
Okay.
Baxter was low from the onset. We didn't have as many, but I think we're 62 to 65, Ruth. I'm not 100% sure, but close to that. So if you don't have any questions, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Good evening, everyone. The time I have, I wanted to share a little bit. I won't have a lot of time necessarily to talk about students or parents, although they've worked very hard and sacrificed a lot. I want to take this time to talk two things. Number one, I want to talk about Forest View Middle School staff accomplishments, what we've learned and what I've seen as a leader in that building of the adversity and the teamwork and all the changes that occurred over almost a calendar year, if we go back to last school year. And then also touch base with everybody about what lies ahead, where we've been in different learning models, and then what it's going to look like moving forward. So as you know, the strength of our school district really lies in the strength of our staff. And if you've probably had any kid go through Forest View, know that we've got one heck of a good staff, an excellent staff. Through all the thick and thin and the things that have happened, they've really risen to the occasion, whether it's, sitting down and talking about issues and concerns on how we're going to put different versions of learning plans together. They've all pitched in and focused on what needed to be focused on. And I always go back to what Superintendent Larson talked about at the beginning of the school year. Do we remember that? We all did videos. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And that's really, again, what staff have done. And it's been great to be in my position to be able to see that through a stressful environment, to see who has been really rising to the occasion. So through our conversations in planning and implementation of certain things, there's been two themes that come out with my staff. Anytime that we talk about a learning plan, number one, how do we best engage students in the content? How do we engage them in that content through that model? How do we best do that? So there's always that revision and changing in that constant improvement with our staff. Secondly, which is very important in education in general, but really important in middle school, is how do we maintain and better build positive relationships with kids, whether it be through our AABB, full distance learning, or coming back to full enrollment through modified in person. And that's always a part of it. It's not necessarily what I push, it's embedded into our teaching staff at Forest View. Those two things, content, how do we do best with our process, and how do we make great relationships with kids to improve that process. So I'll give you some broad examples of some things I'm really impressed by what I've seen with my staff. Number one, and this is a little kudos to Sarah Porish too, is that if you think a year ago of just our comfortability of Google Classroom and technology, and fast forward to today, we're off the charts, you guys. We're off the charts. And that's something we should be talking to community about. Because it's not just technology to have fun, it's those 2 points that I talked about. How do we build better relationships through distance learning with our technology, and how do we deeper engage kids in content with our technology? And that's been amazing to see with our staff. And I would imagine that elementary and high school is the same way, but I just need to know from my perspective, it's been crazy amazing. The core areas, in particular, math, language, arts, science, and social. What I've seen over the past year with alignment of content, with our assessments, with our lesson plans, with alignment to state standards. Again, that's no small part that Tim Murtha played in this, but they've really taken that to task. And if you look at any grade level, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there will be so much discussion about alignment, about content, delivery, and assessment. It's just been very impressive. And then the last piece is just, kind of one thing you take a look at is you get a feel for the teamwork. When we throw out a challenge to my staff, it's not been perfect. We know that because this whole situation hasn't been perfect, but they've really stepped up to the plate and they really, got together as a team and figured out the problem. And it goes back to those 2 points that I mentioned earlier, deep engagement of content and relationships with kids. So if you took a snapshot right now of Forest View, because right now we have our 5th grade in our learning cohort model, which was different than a learning center model, by the way, in the fall. And then we have 6th through 8th grade kids in our distance learning. So here's what you'd see. If you kind of do a virtual walkthrough, you'd see 6th through 8th grade students in Phi-Ed doing virtual workouts. So if you walk into my gym right now, you'll have some Phi-Ed teachers in front of their Chromebook doing exercises with the kids. You'll see every class doing hourly Google Meets. And our staff, once we made that decision to have Google Meets for distance learning, has been wonderful. They've maintained those relationships and really been able to strengthen those relationships the best they can through that model. You'll see our 5th grade distance learning teachers. We have 2 of them that are doing morning meetings, setting the tone for the work that lies ahead. Our multimedia staff, Project Lead the Way art staff, our rotation people, they've been busy doing virtual demonstration and virtual projects. Joe Polkamp, Project Lead the Way, working on a woods project. He is, we're having parents pick up their wood projects and whatever they can do at home, they'll do at home, and he'll guide them through that. So they're really problem solving with that. Those 5th grade learning cohorts, they've really dialed that in over the course of the last 2 weeks to make what's going on in the learning cohort as seamless as what's going on in the classroom. Very excited to be able to start next week with all those 5th grade kids in each class. If you see our SPED classrooms, you'll see some real creative ways that our paraprofessionals and our SPED staff have learned to support kids through the mainstream and for those pull-out sections, whether it's keeping kids a little bit after or during that break, or that 1:35 time to 3:30 for those kids. They've really utilized the school day really well to capture the time with those special education kids to get them additional support. Our media center folks, they continue to promote literacy. If you drive by our front loop, there's a checkout bin right on the front of the school for kids to drop off books and pick up books. And so they're continuing to do that. And we have a pretty robust online library as well that we're supporting. So last thing I'll talk about too in terms of that, what you see, you'll see our music department being very flexible and problem solving with that. If we look at before Christmas, our band program did a virtual concert and had some parents watch in through Zoom and do some things that way. I know our choir is looking at doing some concerts that are socially distant. And you will hear from our counselors as well, who will be here tonight to talk a little bit about their flexibility that they've done. So, like I said before, I'll repeat myself. I'm very impressed with my staff. They have risen to the challenge with everything with engaging kids. So I'm probably way over my time, but quickly, what will be moving forward? We've had a bunch of different learning models that have been appropriate to where it was for the for infection rate with COVID. We were planning for the 16th to have all kids, 5, 6, 7, 8, return to modified in-person learning. When the communication came out that we're going to AABB, where we're at today, we have a total of 75 kids that are coming from distance learning to in-person, and we'll have 15 kids going from in-person to distance learning as of this morning. So our challenges right now are this, is getting everybody prepped for procedural roles, our safety procedures, our logistic procedures. We built the school this year, our internal infrastructure and our classrooms for hybrid, and now we got to shift. We got to get desks back in the classrooms. We have 35 minutes for lunch to get 500 kids through there potentially at one time, so we have to be flexible with that. So we're busy right now to make it back to conventional world, but still have those safety procedures laying over the top of that. So we got a long ways to go, a short time to get there with that, but we have our 2 planning days set up for Thursday and Friday with our staff. Our scheduling is going to look good. We've had some adjustments that we've had to do from the AABB distance learning to now full modified in person.
Any questions?
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for inviting us in. First, I want to start by saying that I have some thank yous to give. In challenging times, it's easy to get focused on the things that need improvement and need help, but I want to thank our district level administration, from superintendent to Tim, Heidi, Angie, and our new member, Angie Hamilton, for our COVID coordinator. They've provided tremendous help this year like never before, because we're in such strange times. I also wanted to share a little bit about the people who have risen to the occasion. Like John and Tammy said, our staff have been tremendous. They have been asked to do things that they've never been asked to do. And I'm one of the more senior people in this room in education, and so we had a really big pivot. And when you watch somebody that has 30 to 35 years in the classroom all of a sudden be asked to jump in and confidently teach in front of students, especially high schoolers, I just have been very impressed. But that goes beyond the teachers. It's our custodians, our cooks, and our paraprofessionals, our clerical. It's everybody. And I think you see a lot about people's character in the face of adversity. I always say it's easy to be happy and positive when things are going well, but when we've had a year like we've had, it's I'm just really proud of the people that I work with at Brainerd High School. Another group this year that I'm grateful for is our parents. You know, when you're a high school principal, parents are kind of taking steps away from their students' education. They're not necessarily volunteering in the classroom anymore, maybe for prom, but parents this year have also been really put into a very difficult situation where they haven't had to go check homework maybe in years past or check that their student was logging in and going to their class. And just this weekend, I spoke with a dad who was just very frustrated, and he just wants his son back in school. And I said to him, I agree. I'm with you 100%. And many of them are working, and they're going to their jobs and coming home, and if they open up their email, they're seeing maybe messages from Brainerd High School about attendance and assignments. So I just want to tell you how grateful I am about the parents, because even with their frustration, they've been very respectful and they're reaching out to me. So I haven't talked about kids, high schoolers, but they're amazing and they always have been. So I feel like they are resilient, and they go with things. And yes, they're not happy about things, but you know, the nice thing about a high schooler is wait about 10 minutes and then they might be happy. I mean, it just depends on the circumstances. And I'm very excited to get them back in the building. This year, COVID has certainly presented challenges, but you know, challenges can also be super fun and positive, like our construction. A number of you were able to go on our tour today, and in the face of a pandemic, we've seen a beautiful construction project happen, and it's, you know, just taking such great shape. We're a year and a half in to the actual construction, and we've got a year and a half left. And it's exciting and beautiful, and I'm very grateful to our community as well, as Tammy alluded to, that our community supports education like they do. In regards to our learning model, we're excited to get them back. Thanks to our teacher leadership team, we've had some teachers step forward and have sat for the last 2 weeks and been planning safety procedures. High schoolers, some of our 9th graders have not been in the building yet, and then all of our students change schedules at the semester, and so we have to show them some new spaces that we've opened up. And we also are going to be using some new procedures and practices when they come back. We're going to do directional traffic. We're going to be spacing students a little differently out in our commons area and our lunchrooms. And I think these are really great steps to ensure that we can stay in school. So we're going to do our best there. If you have any other questions, I didn't prepare anything as well as Tammy and John, but our numbers in regards to distance and in hybrid, distance and in person may fluctuate more than an elementary and a middle school, because what we're seeing is that some of our students are opting to stay distance or go distance because of the conditions that they've had the last couple months. Unlike an elementary and middle school student, high school students have different options available during their day. And what we have seen through this pandemic is that there's been an increase for labor in our teenage labor market. So many of our students are working, many of them beyond 25 hours a week, and they are opting to stay in distance learning. So we'll see how that goes as we transition into spring. We also have students that are very heavily involved in activities, and that may impact their decision to stay in school and or stay at home and do distance learning. So that's it from Brainerd High School. If you have any questions.
I have a question, and I would have asked it of the other two also, but pre-pandemic, we probably thought that maybe we were going to a model where kids would go to online learning. And I think the thing that we've learned during the pandemic is that online learning does not work very well, that they need contact with a teacher. How would you address that?
I would agree. I do think, though, that we've seen some students do very well with distance learning and working independently, but I would say that we've exposed those students who have not done well during this time. And as most of you are aware, Brainerd High School is in the process of being approved for an online school. And I think that's a really good step in the right direction. I think it's providing more choice for students. And I just think that we have to be very careful about making sure that the students who sign on to take those online courses, it's appropriate for their learning style.
Any other questions? Any comments about that? Tammy or John?
No, I would say we did talk about that at the elementary level, and a few select, students are really probably the right fit for a distance learning in the elementary. If you look at their age appropriateness and their learning ability, but the majority of teachers just said it is not that many. It was not that many of their students when they assessed who thrived more, who flipped it and did better in distance learning. Building wide, it was only a handful of kids, and the majority of our students we could then see do better coming on campus, live and in front of us, with us there to dip in, lean in, and be right there to help guide and direct.
One last thing before I go is I tease our staff and parents that I run into, but the question I get most asked is, are we having prom? So I just want to be on record that we are planning a prom under the safety guidelines through the state of Minnesota. And right now, it's in the end of April, and our advisor is amazing, Alexis Marcello. She's planning on having 8 2-hour proms in small gatherings, socially distanced at an event center. So we are trying to be really creative and thinking outside the box this year. And we just hope that the COVID rates keep going down, right? So that we can not only have a really good prom celebration, however we need to have it, and then also a commencement at the end of the year, so.
And are you as optimistic about graduation?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've learned a lot this last year, and we're gonna take that knowledge and that experience and move it forward. We're gonna have commencement outside.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
I know that Forest View counselors are going to give an update on mental health and that kind of stuff. Do you have anything to report on the mental health of students? And
I think the mental health of everyone this past year has been challenged.
okay, and have you been able to provide more support?
We do. We have through our contract with Northern Pines Mental Health Services, they can do virtual visits. They have continued virtual visits throughout the entire distance learning. And we also have our own staff and school counselors that have provided that access to support.
That leads me to a comment. So I have a 10th grader that's full-time distance learning and will remain distance learning because he's spectrum and we don't want to transition him. A week ago, on a weekend night, one of his teachers reached out to us on a Saturday night on her own time to indicate that he was having some issues mentally and he was afraid to talk to us. And it gave us an opportunity to sit down and have a dialogue with him. So it's not just Northern Pines. These teachers are doing an excellent job of just not just monitoring the kids that are coming in and out, but they're watching the distance learners too. And I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, that's great to share, and thank you for sharing that, because our distance learners too, for whatever reason that they have chosen to be in distance learning, they have needs too, and it can be very isolating for our young people to be at home as much as they have been. Great, thank you all.
Thank you, principals. We appreciate you taking the time out to speak to us. Next we have, is it going to be virtual? Forest View Middle School counselor update? Or are they here in the building?
I believe they're virtual.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I hope so. Okay, so my name is Ashley Rutman. I'm one of the school counselors at Forest View Middle School. And I will just give a quick introduction of my colleagues, and each of those will talk here in a little bit. So I also have Dan Fisher and Trudy Storbakken. And so to start our presentation, I know board members, you were all given a copy of our presentation. And then it's titled Forest View Counselors Striving to Impact, Strive to Impact, Maximize Our Impact with All Students. And then we also have the tiered system for school counseling. And then we also included our December data report. Our conversation with you today will not focus on the December data report, but we wanted you to all have that copy. We do data reports monthly. We share them with our advisory council, and it's just a good insight into the data that we collect and how that data informs our work as school counselors at Forest View. So to start, I just want to say thank you for this time and this space to allow us to provide you with an update on our work with students, what our data is showing or telling us, how we're meeting students' needs. And then I think the grand question that we've been getting while students are in distance learning especially is, what do school counselors do? And so what we wanted to show or tell is that we don't really look at what we do, but what we strive to show people is how students are different because of what we do in the school building. And so, you know, part of what makes our team really special is we are really passionate, we're really data focused, and we continuously search for ways to maximize our impact. At times we don't know all of our students, which can be hard, and we wish it were a little different. But part of how we've really, I think, risen to the occasion of this pandemic, which has had its trying times, no doubt, is that we've found different ways to have resources accessible to really anybody. We've created a virtual calming room, and we did that at the start of the pandemic. And we kind of noticed we had no idea how long the pandemic was going to last. We had no idea what it was going to entail. There was a lot of fear and anxiety. And so the virtual calming room has a variety of tools for students, families, adults, really anybody who can access our school counseling website has access to it. And then fast forward into December of this year, when we really started to feel the weight of the pandemic and really thought that we really needed to try and take care of families and students in a much different way. And so after a brainstorm, we decided to create a website called Softening Loneliness, really to try and help people create connections, to feel more grounded, and to feel like there was hope at the end of this tunnel. And so that website is geared more towards families, but of course, students or children could benefit from some of the resources put on there as well. As school counselors, we also do what our teachers are doing, and we have Google Classrooms for all of our students. And so you can find different resources or different links to meet with counselors, and our access to us, our request form to get an appointment with us is also on that website. So part of what we have been trying to do, going back to that impact piece with our students, is this year we've really, as school counselors, tried to get a hold of our MTSS team and really tried to hone in on practices that we could enhance to make better. We have a team that meets once a week, and we really try and look at and catch students early in middle school who are really struggling. Maybe students in our elementary buildings who have had a lot of support and they're coming to Forest View and really struggling, to try and problem solve what is the next best step for those kids. And that team is a really strong team. We have two wonderful school psychs. We have our administrators, and we have our collaborative worker who joins in on that as well. you know, really our learning cohort was an option or an opportunity for us as counselors. We were in front of our kids delivering, we were able to deliver 3 lessons to all of our 5th graders, all 500-ish of them. And between the start of the school year and when we went distance learning. And those lessons were on social emotional health, different strategies, kind of mindfulness strategies, coping strategies, things like that. And in December, one of our teachers, or early January, one of our teachers, she's a beautiful soul. She was really touched by a student who had kind of experienced their own mental health crises and was really feeling overwhelmed as the teacher, and started kind of looking at different ways to help teachers feel more comfortable to manage and care for these student crises. And we caught wind of it, Mr. Fisher did, and brought it to our team, and we really tried to help guide this teacher and really tried to join our forces to better educate our teachers, to provide them some time and opportunity to do some reading and do some conversations on mental health of kids. All along, we as school counselors are really partnering with Minnesota Department of Health and Stephanie Downey, who is our representative, to try and enhance our crisis response and training for teachers as well, and our protocols. So I'll kind of transition, and Trudy will talk here in a little bit kind of about that mental health piece of our students, as I know some of you are wanting that update as well. And so, you know, one of the things we always say is that we want to make the list of kids and to be seen as a support system for them and their families. So part of all of those things that I just spoke about, that's part of that work. We know that we are not able to always get in front of all of our kids, all 2,000 of them. And so we try and do our best to at least be a face or somebody they recognize, so that if they are struggling, that they reach out. And I would say our kids do a good job of doing that. This fall has been much better as far as us being able to connect with kids. They're much more comfortable, and we've been doing different things to allow that to happen. So part of our focus during distance learning has really been early on just noting that a lot of our kids were really struggling without the 5 days of contact with teachers, and our teachers were doing a wonderful job, but they were also learning a new system of delivering curriculum and content while creating relationships as well. So our focus during distance learning was really pretty heavy in focusing on kids who were not performing or failing multiple classes. Students who were disengaged, we were getting nowhere. There was no logging in. You know, they had Wi-Fi or a hotspot. And so we really, as school counselors, had to work really hard to figure out what were the barriers. We often term that in our team as the big work, because we know that really a win in that situation is just getting a response from a parent who we haven't heard anything from, or getting a student to send us a chat that acknowledges that they're okay. So some of those really small things to people on maybe the outside who wouldn't know, but those are really big deals to us. You know, they make us smile. We're like, yes, we got it. We're okay. We'll keep moving forward from here. But the big work is the understanding of the barriers. It's the connection with families. You know, they're not just this entity in our community. We really, truly, and genuinely care for them. We want their children to be doing well in all facets, you know, socially, emotionally, with their education, with their relationships. And then, of course, the big work of problem solving. How are we going to help this student or child when they're not in our building? And so really leaning on community resources, our collaborative worker, and just our knowledge and ability to continuously check in with those families and those students, because change requires that consistent work. We're not going to get there if we're only a one phone call and then we never engage in the conversation again. And so that, for the most part, has been where we've spent our time during distance learning. And I know Trudy will provide you with a little bit more insight into the mental health component of our middle school students.
Thank you, Ashley. The next part that I'm going to speak on just a little bit here is is the graphic that shows the heart and hands. And, you know, one of the things that so we're on the same handout, and on this handout, it shows that to date in our building, we've had 23 student hospitalizations. And what we know is that that's a very significant number compared to any year. I've been a school counselor in Brainerd for over 20 years, and we've never had that number. And as we continue to get emails from different hospitals across the state and we saw our numbers climbing, one of the things that really hit me was really knowing that we, as 3 school counselors at Forest View Middle School, we make a really big difference. And we know that we don't make that difference on our own. We're a part of a community, we're a part of a village. But what we also know is that we're often on the front line of a lot of students when they're in crisis. And not everyone has that understanding of that part of the job that we do. 2 years ago, it has written down here, 2 years ago, we had 133 total suicidal concerns that school year that the 3 of us assessed, worked through, and helped our students find their way through it at a variety of levels. When you look at that also, 57 of those were from March until May, which when I did the math in my head, that meant that almost every day one of us was taking care of a child who had indicated something along that realm. And so what we've found over time is that this has become more of a dictating part of our days. When students are in crisis, when they come down, that might not be a suicidal concern. It might be tears. It might be some really high level anxiety that's making it really hard for that student to come to school, to stay at school. We work through a lot of those kinds of things. We work through those with our teachers too. And so I think the other piece is just for us, we really realized that, well, we know we have a huge impact. We know the work we do. We know the hearts that we have. We know the hearts that we carry in our hands. But also seeing that 23 is a really high number. Last year, at this time of year, we had a total of 5. So that's significant. What we also know is that I lost my train of thought. So it's a big part of things. Okay, so Dan is going to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Dan's going to talk about the tiered system quickly.
I think and I'm going to talk about the next handout. And the next handout is a tiered system. And this handout shows how school counselors support all students. And the reason why we want to talk about this a little bit is that when Trudy was talking about how before distance learning, our day was really driven by responsive services. And that bullet point kind of shows what responsive services are. That's a lot of different things. That's not just suicidal concerns. That's a really high level student conflict that needs to be taken care of right now. That's a student who has really high anxiety and cannot be in class. You have to deal with that right now. High level emotions that are, whether it's just, which is pretty normal for the developmental age of students. But when we're in full in-person learning, that is what drove our day, is that responding to crisis. And so what I want to talk about now is that when we talk about a tiered system, is school counselors work with all students in a tiered system. You've heard of multi-tiered systems of support. That is how we address academic, social, emotional, and behavioral concerns. You've heard of RTI, PBIS. Well, how school counselors work is that same thing. We deliver services in all 3 of those tiers. Tier 1 is our preventative and proactive area. That's the area that school counselors have effect on all of our students. And so in these areas, for example, this would be our classroom lessons, because this is where we get to all 5th graders when we teach top 20. And what this does is it provides all students the access to very typical social and emotional learning topics. When we're in front of kids, all kids, we can teach social and emotional learning. We know that as a district that we're focusing on social and emotional learning, but in tier 1, that's the importance of that. So when we talk about classroom lessons, that's why that's important, because that's our program, our school counseling program, how all students can access our programming. We do Courage Retreats for all sixth graders. That is available to all sixth graders. Every single sixth grader gets to experience it. It's a full day retreat on character building. We also do a Break the Silence, which is our suicide prevention. And we do a presentation that we partner with. Over the years, we've partnered with Dale Kuglin, and we've partnered with the Crisis Center, the Crisis Line. And we teach kids basically coping skills and how to recognize early signs and symptoms, what to do if they hear from a friend that they're, thinking about suicide. And these are things that we do on the preventative side that touch all kids or that reach all students. Tier 2 is the next tier. And tier 2 is much more strategic. So this is our students that have, maybe teachers have said, I'm really concerned about Johnny. Can you meet with them? Can you call home? These are kids that we do small group work with, or any time that they're kind of identified in the MTSS system that we meet with once a week. Any of these kids are considered our tier 2 kids. They're kids that we are working with specifically, whether that's direct counseling, direct group work, or just calling home or behind the scenes, emailing teachers, updating them what's going on. And then we have our tier 3. Tier 3, when it comes to how school counselors work, is anytime that we are providing a service that is a student that already has an intense intervention, like a special education student, or a student who is within our school-based mental health program with Northern Pines. So many of our students that have a Northern Pines in their day, they might have a once a week or a once a week group or individual session. Sometimes those students might need support outside of that, and they might need to be involved in a responsive service. And then we are somehow providing some support in that way. And we work very closely with our Northern Pines, and we just have a team approach when it comes to that. Students who are on IEPs, we sit on their teams at times, on their IEP meetings at times. We are able to provide services with those kids. So what that tiered system shows is that, in a perfect world, when we can do our job, we're delivering in all 3 of those tiers, and that pyramid at tier 1 should be a big bulk of what we do. But ultimately what Trudy was mentioning is about, when we're responding in crisis response, tier 1 goes first. That means we're not getting into classrooms. That means we're not doing the work that we need to do to get ready for Courage Retreats and so on and so forth. So we've had to make a huge shift in distance learning, and we've had to get creative, and we've reached students, and we had something like 145 direct student contacts in the time of distance learning. That means Google Meetings and student chats and emails. So if you think about that, we have come a long way in reaching kids when they're in full distance learning, but that just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how we work. So unless there is anything else to add, Ashley or Trudy. And I think at this time, maybe, I know we kind of went over our time a little bit too, but is there any questions either about the tiered system of support, about the impact of all students, the handout, and also any questions from the December data report? Does anybody have any questions at this time?
Dan, I have a question. In tier 3, have you seen the numbers go up with the intensive intervention?
Yes. I would say that the triangle can sometimes be flopped on its head a little bit. So our students who are in, not only our kids who are in our Northern Pines school-based program, there are a lot of kids that we work with that see a counselor outside, either with our Nystrom's, with Lakes Country Counseling, our numerous community partners. And one of the phrases that we've actually heard, this is actually one of Trudy's students have told her this, and she came down to her office and said, I'm having so much anxiety, I can't be in class right now, I need to talk to somebody. And we would say, well, are you working with a therapist, or are you working with a clinician outside of school? And her quote was, well, it's Tuesday and I don't have an appointment until Thursday, so I need help now. So it's that responsive intervention to the tier 3 kids that pyramid sometimes basically flips on its head, when in reality, that's, in a perfect world, that should be less of our time.
Well, and I think I would just add a little to that piece that sometimes, you know, when kids are working with a therapist and you need to have a mental health diagnosis, sometimes it digs up really hard things for one part. But another piece is that you learn some skills, you work some skills, and then when you come to in our building, you're practicing those skills. And so sometimes that's where we have a really big role is they're learning how to manage that anxiety, but they need us to walk with them to do it on that daily basis. So one of the things that we've really talked about is that we need therapists, we need counselors, and we work together, and sometimes in different roles, supportive of each other, but they're not one and the same either.
And one thing I'll just add quickly too is that school counselors are very uniquely trained. We're actually trained, we have master's degrees in counseling, which is mental health, but then we're licensed by MDE. So we work in schools. So we work in schools and trained more along the lines of the mental health field. So we're kind of having that like unique, we work in both fields. And I just think I should add that into that tiered system.
Thanks. Director Nelson?
Just a question on you mentioned the 23 student hospitalizations. That's just since September, and those are mental health related?
Yes. So what's really hard about hospitalization is it can be different depending on the student, but for the most part in these cases, the 23 this school year, they are mental health crises. They are students, there's some grave concern about harm to self. There's been attempts. Sometimes it can be some of hospitalizations that we've had in the past, it's maybe been a student is on medications that are causing extreme mood or concerns. But for the most part, our students who have been hospitalized this school year, there is an immediate need for a kind of a crisis response and crisis plan, and that hospitalization to ensure student safety. And so that would be, this 23 stands out a little differently. And I think one of the things, kind of going back to the question that was asked of Dan as well, is that responsive services. I think that that's the hard part when students are not in our building, is there sometimes isn't that ability to be known. It can be easily hidden by not logging on or by not showing a face, but as one of the board members kind of shared, teachers are doing a really good job. They always have. They give us the concerns. We take them. We try and take care of kids, and they're still doing that. But I think the year has looked different, and I think at times families are trying to walk the walk that we know all too well, which is caring for people in crises. And we know the steps to take. We know how to ensure safety plans. We know how to be a support for families. And sometimes when families are trying to do it on their own, they themselves might be working in crisis too. They're trying to work, they're trying to provide, and supervision cannot always be guaranteed. And so there's this interesting dynamic with kids at home that's just caused a different stress. Where when they're in our building, we can do some of that, the big pieces of that work.
Well, and I was just going to add for some understanding that when we say 23 student hospitalizations, those aren't students that go to the ER here in Brainerd. That's where at the ER through MCO here in Brainerd that they decide that the student needs to be hospitalized outside of Brainerd in an inpatient type of a facility. So that's different from the numbers of students who have gone to the ER here in Brainerd.
And in past years, it's been 5 or 6 for the total year, correct?
Last year, for the total year, it was 8.
Okay.
And we know we always see a pretty significant increase as March through May roll around. There's a pretty high number. I think 2 years ago in the month of March, I had 4 as the 7th grade counselor just in that 1 month. So we always know that end of the school year is significant. We don't know how this year will compare by any means because it's been just a different year overall. But our number is high already, and we know that mental health wise, we are not in the tough part of the year yet.
Well, hopefully having the kids back in school will help that. So, yeah, that was very eye-opening. Thank you for all that you guys do, and I'm glad our kids are getting back in school. Wow. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. And you have a supporter in myself, just in my professional line of work. But I also know that your line of work, you don't often get those attaboys or attagirls. I know and Principal John over there, you got a great cheerleader there. But I just want you to know I really appreciate what you do, and with a parent with children there, again, so glad you're on our side and supporting those students. Thank you for that.
You guys do an awesome job. We really appreciate all that you're doing during this year and always. So thank you for speaking tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Blueprint 181 project update with Damian Williams.
Good evening.
Hello.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we'll get started on our presentation. This is our bond improvements update for February 8th, 2021. We will start with Mr. Whitmore on the high school.
All right. Well, most of you went on a tour today. Area 2, Travel Flooring and Finishes. We got half of the Performing Arts Center lobby, Terrazzo laid out. We'll be working to get towards the north half in the next week or two. In the auditorium, we're just waiting on concrete to be poured for the theatrical stage. And framing is actually now complete. And architectural stones being installed, and ceramic tile will start tomorrow. Area 10 pool footings and foundations are complete. Actually, they finished up after I sent this. The masonry items, the two partition walls are complete, and they will be working on the elevator shaft next. Area 6, all the signage has been installed. In fact, the 4 pictures on the right-hand side of the slide are all the signs that were installed. So that is complete and done. We, on Wednesday, will be getting the solid surface countertops going on the furniture in Area 6. Area 8, we're working on building out the rest of the CTE expansion and working on finishing the fax rooms and the a la carte and Warrior store. And Area 7, installing aluminum jams prepped for paint. All the space is ready to go. If we go to the next slide, PAC auditorium, our Marlite panels are essentially complete. In the Performing Arts Center lobby, we will be installing the rock on the fireplace after we get a little further north on the terrazzo. And this picture was actually taken on Friday. That's where they were at on Friday. And then today we were there and you all saw. Okay, so that's going very nicely. And again, serving line, we were just with capitalizing on kids being out the last couple of weeks or months here, and getting a lot of these finished items completed. The left-hand side is the signage was installed in the serving line cafeteria area, and then as you all saw today, it was ground out, but that's the epoxy that was laid out in the Performing Arts lobby. Any questions on the North Campus? All right, South Campus, we're validating bids. We're reviewing some cost reduction options with consultant personnel, and we'll have another list to present to oversight for discussion next week. Any questions on South Campus?
No, just that I'd like to add that we're going to meet with Sourcewell tomorrow, that we still continue to do some looking at the project, and Scott found a few more things today, and then tomorrow we're meeting with Sourcewell. So we keep plugging away trying to get that number down.
Absolutely.
North
Well,
Campus
that-
looked
that,
wonderful today,
concludes it
so thank you.
Yeah, people are not
Oh,
gonna
you're welcome,
believe
yeah.
the facelift in that building. It is unbelievable.
That's cool.
Yeah, great job,
Yeah,
you
I think
guys.
when Principal Dustin brought up earlier with the change in travel patterns, I mean, I think kids, the students will be quite surprised when they come back on the 16th at just how that building has changed in a couple of months since they've been gone.
Yeah, it's looking great.
Cool.
Absolutely. Okay. Warrior Early Learning Center, we're wrapping up the finishes throughout, curtain walls being installed and working in the boiler room and working on final cleaning. So we're just wrapping things up. We did lose our electrical contractor, their crew for because of COVID, but we did get a couple of electricians back, so we're picking away at it, but we're getting close to the end on that project, so just getting things wrapped up here. Garfield Elementary, it's just in the planning stages for phase 2, working on a schedule, and then making sure we have material procurement. The gym expansion drawings are going to be completed and ready for review at our next POT meeting. So there'll be more to come there. Lowell Elementary, fin tube radiation installs is happening now. We were waiting a long time for those parts and pieces. We started the locker installation, which that was last week. It is complete as of today. And then in the pictures here, they're starting some of the demolition in the lower level. So we're getting an early start in the lower level just to ensure success this summer. Lastly, Riverside Elementary, we're continuing to plan for 2021. We are going to be working on getting an early start in there as well in March. And again, just getting our schedule and our materials locked down for a successful summer. Any questions?
Anybody? Thank you, Damien, and thanks for the tour today.
You're welcome. Yes, you're welcome. Great seeing everybody.
Next, we have an action item, number 11, approval of the fiber IRU lease agreement with Brainerd Public Utilities. And Marcy's going, oh, Sarah? Okay.
Hello, thanks for having us. We are here to just bring forward our first fiber lease agreement. So I just wanted to point out very quickly, again, thank you to the forward thinking of the board. Years ago with the fiber ring, and now again with our lease with CTC, it really puts the district in a good spot in multiple ways, not only for our network, for our students, but now we're into that next phase of we're gonna help our community. And we get to be involved with our community and continue to enhance the fiber and the network and the internet in our community as well. So it's very exciting. So this fiber lease that we are bringing forward is our, like I said, our first one of probably many. And this one is with Brainerd Public Utilities, okay? And they wanted to lease some of our fiber going from Washington and Nisswa Elementary for their purposes. So working with CTC and our legal team, we drafted this lease that now we will be able to use in the future as more businesses are interested.
Sarah, can you explain what dark fiber is? And I always think of the dark net, you know, and so it just sort of caught me when I read that.
Yes, so it's not dark net, no.
Okay.
But there are fibers, and so the best way to explain this, I think, is that, you know, it's a fiber network now instead of dial-up and that sort of thing. So it's the fiber that runs from our building out to other buildings, and it's just that increased speed, increased connection, that sort of thing.
So it wasn't fiber that wasn't being used, and that's why it was called dark.
Well, we aren't using it, so
Okay,
So I'm not sure why the dark. I would have
Okay.
to ask that. I'm sorry.
no problem. Just curious. And are we covering our costs with this?
Yeah, so right now, the way that CTC did their last agreement with us, they just basically gave this to us so that we could try to make money on it, which was very generous of them.
Yeah.
So, as Sarah said, we tried to figure out what was a fair price and we went with the 10 years. They were actually interested in buying it, from what I understand, but we did want to keep that ownership. So it is a 10-year lease at the $400 a month. And then they're also taking that space over at Nisswa for potential storage.
And that's a good point too, is bringing up the forward thinking of that disaster relief room at Nisswa. So we are working with our community entities to start to lease out some of that space as well.
So what was the rationale behind the 10-year lease period?
So we don't have to do it every year. 'Cause they do have long-term, I mean, they want it long-term. They were looking at buying it. But we did want to have that 10-year just for potential, I mean, if it goes up, if we want to increase our rates, gives us, it's long-term enough so that we don't have to do it yearly, but it's also not too long so that we may end up having a shortfall.
So we do have the ability to adjust the lease if we feel our costs have gone up.
This would expire in 10 years, so we'd have to look at it then.
Oh, okay.
Well, except you could terminate it with a 6-month notice, and then you could renegotiate, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And as Sarah said, legal basically drafted this for us so that we could use it as a template going forward to anybody who's interested.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to go through this process all over again.
And where did the $400 come from? How in the world did you come up with that number?
So that's from CTC. And so they gave me how much they charge per mile so when they're leasing out fiber, they do it per mile. And so that's the cost that they gave us. And then we looked at what they would do to just any public entity and then what we wanted to do with our business partners and as a community.
So it's kind of a market rate.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll move to approve the fiber lease agreement as presented.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Hegland, second by Director Blacklands to approve the fiber lease agreement as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, or nay? Motion is passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, number 12, we have the approval of the first reading of the revised MSBA Policy 714, fund balance as presented.
All right, for the new board members, I have been saying for quite some time that we need to look at this policy, so we're finally getting to it. We would like to change the percent of the minimum fund balance policy to 10. You know, the previous was 5 with a range of 5 to 7. And with the pandemic, I mean, I think it just enforces that we should have more in our savings. And the other changes in there were that we added the superintendent could also make the assigned fund balances. And then just modifying the wording, we don't conduct an annual review of the audit. We review it when we're looking at the annual audit report. So I just modified the wording there to reflect what we're actually doing. Are there any questions on that?
So 10% of the annual budget, what does that, how
10%.
long of time?
10% of the general fund operating budget would be almost 9 million.
Okay, and that,
So as your expenses go up, your fund balance is gonna go up too.
And I'm guessing we can't just jump to that overnight. Is there a
No.
plan for, along with this policy, for how we'll grow into that, especially now during our deficit that we're in with the pandemic?
That was one of the conversations we had. I mean, this is a goal. It's not something we're gonna be able to just meet next year. But our goal is always during budget planning to try to actually build our fund balance. Sometimes we don't make that just because some things come up, but that is always our goal, to keep increasing that fund balance.
And as we work with auditors, you know, to me, this would flag a footnote if we're not there. Are we just prepared to flag that footnote for the next few years and understanding that while we grow into it, we know that's gonna happen?
Yep.
Okay.
The other thing that I'd like to add is that normally your auditors will tell you that you should have 1.5 to 3 months of operating in your fund balance. Right now, we have less than a month of operating in our fund balance. 12.5% increase would bring it up to 1.5 months of operating. We just felt that that was too big of a jump this year, given what we know, but we feel like we need to be moving in that direction. And so that's why we're bringing forward 10% today. And please be advised that in the future, we probably will want to increase it, but we've got to see kind of what happens this year too before we dare jump that far, that fast. We're at about 9% right now is what we have this past year after our audit, so.
But then after we close this year, we'll be less than that.
Correct.
Yeah, I was kind of heading down the same path as Jan. I'm a little concerned about approving a policy knowing we're going to be in violation right away. That doesn't seem quite right to me, and I wonder if, I think the goal makes sense, 10%, but I wonder if we shouldn't also have a little, at a high level, you know, how are we gonna get there? What's the plan to get there? Not in detail, but to have something that says, here's what we think we can obtain, and I wonder if we even have a tiered 10% goal, that we want to be at 10% by a certain time, a year or two, you know, at some point in the future, versus we change a policy and then now we're in violation of it right away.
I can work on that.
And again, if I remember correctly, it's that this is our goal to try to get there. We're at about 9% right now, so, and like you said, it'll be a little bit less than that, but we feel like if we don't start setting that precedence, then we keep spending. And we, if there's one thing that we've learned through this, is that we don't have enough in our fund balance.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, I think, again, if we said our goal is 10%, we want that, we want to hit that by the end of fiscal year of 23 or whatever that time frame is. And between now and then, you know, we expect it to go, I mean, our policy now, isn't it like 7%? I forget, or no, you said 5.
5
Yeah,
to
okay.
7.
5
yeah.
to 7.
But after the audit and what we're going through this year, we could be well below, you know, our 9 if we're going to be down to 7. And I think we should have some idea of what it is, knowing that that's what our goal is. But I'd be a little concerned about just saying, well, let's make it 10 and then be in violation right away.
I agree. It's just, it's one of those things where right now we say we're meeting it, right? Which I don't feel comfortable at 5%.
I agree. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's where I step from.
So if we approve a policy that says we want to be at 10% by this time frame, and then at the end of this fiscal year at this level, and next fiscal year at whatever that level is, or that time frame, if you can get us to 10% by the end of 21, 22, that'd be fantastic.
Okay.
But if we know we can't, I don't know that we can make it a policy, and, you know, if we have to push it out another year.
Seems like it would belong more in a work plan, the finance committee
Yeah.
level to get there. I agree with you. It makes me uncomfortable to approve a policy that we're gonna violate right away. Now, if the precedent is set, if you know in other districts, this is how they've gotten there, and maybe that's something we need to know is what this looks like in other districts when they want to make this policy change. Maybe this is very standard to make it and know that you will get the footnote right away and grow into it. That would make me feel more comfortable, I guess, knowing that that's how it works.
Yep. Yeah, it's not a note in your financial statements, but it will be noted in the presentation with the auditors.
And then, so, like, if we set that as a benchmark at some point, when is that measured, at the next audit?
Yes.
And when would that be?
It's presented in December. So our fiscal year end is June 30th, but they will present it normally in December.
Yeah, so I would agree with Director Haglund on that, I think, because, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with a policy if we had a target date in there that said by this audit for this fiscal year, but to just arbitrarily raise it to 10% sets us up for failure kind of right out of the chute. knowing what's coming at us over the next few months, right?
Correct, and I think we certainly, yeah, this is just first reading. And so we definitely can go back and do some work on this and bring it back again.
And just for clarification,
bringing this
especially for Director Sjogren and Director Boyles, our committee structure no longer meets, but I serve as the finance chair, and I did meet with Director Lord to discuss this, and we're looking at it as a goal. Quite frankly, we'd really like to be at 12.5% in a couple years, because that's what they recommend as the bare minimum. But we thought 10 was an attainable goal to set. But we're not, setting that in stone. We just, challenge ourselves maybe. So this is the first reading. Is there someone that would like to make a motion?
I wonder if we should just table it and bring it back in 2 weeks.
Can do first reading in 2 weeks.
Okay,
That'd be great. We'll have a few more parameters.
okay.
Sure.
Sounds good.
So we don't have to vote on that, do we?
It's good to discuss it at the board table.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, item 13, we're looking at the approval of the MSBA number 200 series policies for the 3-year review as presented. Superintendent Larson?
This would be the final reading of these. We had the first reading at the last time. There are no major changes. The only change was in 214. MSBA just took out, let's see, I just had it, just the annual review, and it's just nothing. It was just struck from, otherwise there are no changes to any of these policies.
Okay,
I'll move the approval of the MSBA 200 series policies.
I'll second it.
okay, we have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Boyles to approve the MSBA 200 series policies for a 3-year period. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have informational. And the first item, Brainerd Public Schools Foundation update, I'll share with Superintendent Larson. But for those of you that participated in it, the big event was awesome this year. I think the committee was really concerned about the fact that it would be virtual. They thought there would be people that didn't want to participate this year because it's not the same thing as being in person. And they were blown away by the response. The tickets for the event sold out. They did have a certain number, and it was very close to what it's been in the past. I believe that all of the raffles sold out. And they had a great auction. So once again, this money goes directly to students. And it's projects that the school district can't fund. And they're wonderful things that are being done by our teachers and staff in this school district. And so I just want to thank especially Heidi Hahn, what you did, all the work and your great performance.
Dorian Fish doesn't get any better.
And Tom for being a premier sponsor.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah,
Did you want to add anything?
it was just awesome. It was so much fun. I didn't know what it was going to be like doing it from home, but it was really wonderful, and I concur. The people that worked on it just worked tirelessly to make it happen, and I think people were just ready for something fun to do on the weekend. And I said, for the first time in a year, I came to work after a weekend and said, oh, I had so much fun this weekend. So
Yeah.
it was great. So between that and the Super Bowl, it was quite a weekend for Brainerd. So pretty fun.
Yeah, and the community should know that there's a lot of people that really support our school district.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks.
You know, what was really interesting to me was not just the committee members that were running this, but former committee members. They can't leave it. You know, they're not on the board anymore, but yet they come and give of their time and effort. You know, people are really dedicated to this district, and I just, I think we should feel blessed for the people that support this school district. It's a really great school district and great community.
Yep.
Here, here.
Yep. So much fun.
Okay, next we'll have business services report. Marcy Lord.
So in your packet is the enrollment report, and I was just gonna note that we're down 80 from the beginning of the school year, and last year we were down 47 at this point. And then we are up 63.6 from budget, but I just wanted to clarify that we are, the revised budget is ADMs, so converting the students to the actual days that we are here. Whereas the student count is strictly just counting students. So it does look like we're above budget, but when those actually close out at the end of the year, it'll be different. And then just was going to note that this week we start meeting with directors and principals at, for the 21-22 budget review and assumptions and all that good stuff. So you guys will start getting updates in a couple months on what that looks like. Any questions?
Thank you for all the great work you do.
Thanks.
And finally, superintendent's report.
Yeah, I don't have a lot tonight either, just what a great weekend it was. Thank you again for the big event, and I have to say the Super Bowl as well, we have to talk about that, and our very own Joe Haig had a great performance last night, and to have a big win, that was pretty exciting to.
They actually threw a ball to him.
I know, he almost caught it.
He almost did.
I know,
Would've
wouldn't
been
that have been fun? But anyway.
Yeah.
The pictures of him and his mom afterwards on the field are just, they're just heartwarming. So it's, I can't imagine how much fun that must be. And I'm going to go real quickly here too, just a couple of things. As Marcy said, we are starting our budget meetings. We're going to be meeting with each of the directors and each of the principals just to do our preliminary work. And then we'll have everything kind of figured out. And then we will start the actual budget meetings that take a lot more time, where we go through and figure out the number of staff that we need based on enrollment and everything. And so we've got quite an extensive process that we use in our budgeting, and we're really proud of that work that we do. And like she said, we'll be keeping you in the loop and bringing you lots of updates on that as we move forward. Just so much of it weighs on what happens at the legislature that will determine that. And so we aren't going to jump to any big conclusions until we know where we're at going forward. Again, I'm just so thrilled to be having our kids back. And coming on the 16th, it's, I don't know, it's just really exciting. It's what we've been waiting for all year. And I'm so proud of our school, like you were talking about our school and our community, and people have been working really hard to make this a reality, to get our kids back into school. And I'm really proud about the fact that we're bringing our kids back in person much quicker than many schools throughout the state, and particularly schools of our size. And we have just so many people to be thankful for, because everybody's doing their part to make it happen. We're working on the calendars. I believe that at the next meeting, we're going to have both a 21-22 and a 22-23 calendar to bring forward to you. We met with a couple board members. We met with Ed Minnesota last week. They're taking a look at the calendars. I'll send those out to you later this week when we get everything kind of final, so you can take a look at them ahead of time. But the policy and the agreement that we have with Ed Minnesota is that by the first meeting in April each year, we should have the calendar brought forward to the Board of Education and approved. And we feel that we're going to be able to do that early, do it in February at the very latest, the first meeting in March, to give families an idea of what it looks like. Right now, both of the calendars have spring break back in it. It's the original calendar that we had before. We are looking at a little bit more, a couple more days of extensive professional development to help close the achievement gap that we're concerned about as a result of some of the things that our counselors and our principals talked about tonight, as well as the mental health and social emotional supports and needs that we have. And so we'll bring that forth in a lot more detail at the next meeting. But we're really pleased with the collaboration that has taken place to get to this point. Couple of things. Thank you for those who went on the tour. I couldn't believe how much it's changed just since I was in there last. And so it's really fun to have that. This Friday, the Crow Wing County Collaborative Governance Meeting will meet. And then on Monday, there will be no school because of President's Day. That was already scheduled in our calendar. And then Tuesday morning, our kids return. And so any board members, any school directors that are free to show up either at Forest View Middle School or at the high school next Tuesday morning, about 7:45-ish, just to welcome the kids back and just let them know how proud we are and to have them back. Also that afternoon, our Equity Advisory Task Force is going to meet again. And we're just really excited about as we continue to go through this whole process that Director Blacklands and Tim Murtha have shared with you, and we'll keep having reports after we meet each time. A lot of work going on in our district in the area of equity, which we're really proud of. And then the next board meeting, which will be the 22nd, we'll have a tour of the new Baxter Elementary School and Harrison Elementary School. For anyone who would like to go see those schools, and for the new board members as well, so that you get a chance to get in and see some of the magnificent work that our generous community has supported. And so we're just, it really is a fabulous February. You know, we could say fabulous and freezing February today, but you know, you look at all the great things that have happened just in the first 8 days and all the excitement that's ahead, and it's a fabulous February. So that's my report.
Great. Thank you.
Quick question on the next board meeting. It indicates here it's virtual, but it's or in person, correct? Or?
It'll be in person,
Okay.
but I know, like Kevin, you're going to still take it virtual, so we'll do that. We'll still have a limited amount of people that can be in here. So even though we open up public comment, we probably will have to have, like we did earlier this year, in the hallway and then come in to do the public comment. But we'll make sure that we're meeting all the requirements that we have at the next board meeting. But the virtual is there mostly for the people that aren't able to be here. So, yeah. Thank you for asking.
Next, we have other business. And I would be remiss, I have to add this. We talked about Joe Haig, but last night was a very special night for our community. Joe Haig is the first person to ever win a major, or be part of a major championship from a graduate from Brainerd High School. I've known Joe since he was a kid, and he played hockey with my son Will and Miss Russ' son Tate. And Tate and Will were actually a lot taller than him when they played squirt and peewees. And it just shows you that when you have, and this is for the students, when you have hard work and perseverance and goals where you work really hard to do that, that's what Joe did. And I know we have other Brainerd High School graduates that have done that too, but that was an amazing thing that he has done, you know, to make it to the NFL and to win a Super Bowl. So he made us proud last night. And you know, we need that in this pandemic. So congrats to the Haig family and to Joe. And
It's a fabulous February.
it is. Yeah, we can be happy.
Yeah,
So any other comments?
I agree. That was fun.
Then I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.